Stealing a card from the opponent is one of the strongest effects in the game, at least from a card advantage and tempo perspective. While destroying a monster is a strong effect on its own, and leads to a shift in tempo, the fact that you gain a monster while your opponent loses a monster means that the tempo shift impact is doubled. In addition, stealing an opponent's monster can offer disruption or additional avenues of card advantage, depending on the particular card in question. Not all control-changing cards are the same though. I would say that Brainjacker is on the low end of playability. It has the Snatch Steal effect, which is great. Snatch Steal is on the ban list, and Brainjacker has half the drawback compared to Snatch Steal. The problem is that Brainjacker is a turn slower since it is a flip effect monster. I am going to go through a list of the most narrow, difficult to use, or just plain bad ways to take an opponent's monster. Let's start with the downgrades from Brainjacker. Jowls from the Dark Demise steals an opponent's monster for the turn as the flip effect, but it offers the ability for that monster to attack directly. On your opponent's turn, this is sort of like Magical Arm Shield, but on your turn, the effect is much more threatening. Why do I bring this up? Because Rafflesia Seduction is just a downgrade, with the same effect, but not granting the ability to attack directly. Oh boy. Dummy Golem is confusing. I am not bearing the lead, the card is also bad, but the card has several rulings to clarify just what it is supposed to do. Both monsters must remain on the field for the effect to work, which means that if Dummy Golem is attacked and destroyed as a result of battle, the effect does not resolve. The allure of permanent control is also counterbalanced by the fact that this card gives your opponent a monster to use for extra deck summoning. This card is an inconsistent creature swap. Take everything I said about Dummy Golem and apply it to Invader of the Throne. The difference? Invader of the Throne cannot activate its effect during the battle phase. This eliminates that niche case in which Dummy Golem is attacked, flipped, and not destroyed as a result of battle. As a result, this restricts the card to only being useful when flip summoned or flipped face up with a card effect. Interplanetary Invader A takes from the Turbo Synchron school of thought, where the player takes a lot of battle damage for some sort of benefit. The card would actually be improved if the player were allowed to attack into a big monster. Because with the way the card works now, your opponent has all the initiative. They can either remove Interplanetary Invader A with a card effect, or, worst case scenario, give you the weakest monster on their side of the field. Imagine being given an amoeba to add insult to injury. At this point in the list, the entries are going to be restricted to those which only affect a small subset of monsters. The Charmer series can steal a monster for as long as they remain face up on the field. This already makes them difficult to use, and having to protect a weak flip effect monster on the field compounds that. Pylon being extremely matchup dependent, these cards should never be considered for the side deck, much less the main deck. Possessed Dark Soul reads like it has potential. As an ignition effect, you can tribute the monster to permanently take control of all level 3 or lower monsters on your opponent's side of the field. It is a little difficult to imagine a situation in which this would be useful, but at least it is on an easy to summon monster. Pernicious Puppeteer has a similar effect, lasting only until the end of the turn, with a discard cost, and with the restriction that monsters cannot activate their effects, nor be tributed for any reason, and cannot be used as synchro material. Already, that is quite a downgrade, but it is on a 2 tribute monster, making it totally impractical. Taking control of one specific type of monster, even if only for the turn, can be good. The trio of type-stealing hand traps see side deck play from time to time, but these cards have 2 advantages. The first being that each target 2 of the more common monster types, and, more importantly, these cards are easy to activate. Being hand traps, you can discard them to activate their effect. Shadow Tamer and Dragon Manipulator lack these 2 advantages, each struggling with the flip effect problem, and only affecting one monster type. I do want to add Electromagnetic Bagworm too, as it is similar since it only affects machine monsters. Electromagnetic Bagworm is slightly better though, as it has a debuff effect on the monster which destroys it by battle. You might remember this effect on the more popular card Slate Warrior, since the cards were printed together as video game promos. In the context of their archetype, Naturia Fruitfly and Reptilian Viper are a bit better, but when looking at the cards in isolation, they are totally unplayable. Shadow Tamer, Dragon Manipulator, and Electromagnetic Bagworm target some of the more common monster types, but monsters with 0 attack and/or defense are much less common by comparison. I guess this is a good counter to Rainbow Dragon at least. Rescue Warrior is the most narrow card on the list. It only works for monsters you own but your opponent controls. This situation does not come up very often. To activate the effect, the monster needs to be destroyed by battle, and granted, you take no battle damage involving this card. You can crash this monster into an opponent's, and even your own monster, to trigger the effect. The best use I can think for this card is getting back one of your kaiju monsters. But there seems to be a more practical card to return monsters to their original owners. Owner's Seal. This spell is much faster, affects multiple monsters, and does not require battle. Honorable mention to remove Brainwashing for the permanent effect, although it is slower as it is on a trap. At the bottom of the list is an odd one. Missing Force is not narrow, pretty much unrestricted in what monsters it can take, although there is a stipulation of controlling no other monsters for the effect to be activated. What makes the card horrible is the restrictions it imposes. You are not allowed to special summon or conduct your battle phase. The best use of this card might be to tribute an opponent's monster for a tribute summon. This is assuming that you haven't already used your normal summon on Missing Force. This card came out after Soul Exchange, which also removed the battle phase, but did not restrict special summoning. A couple years after Missing Force came out though, and then a couple years after Missing Force, the Monarch Stormforth came out, which did not remove the battle phase, but restricted special summoning from the extra deck. Somehow, Missing Force got the worst of both worlds.